In this episode, I want to share with you something very personal. I just went through an experience that I'll be sharing with you because I believe opening my heart is something that can help you as well. Because going through this experience, I have gone through having a sense of loss, grieving, and because I have stated before that in this podcast, Transforming Grief, I want to talk about things that we don't talk much with others because maybe they say things like, you are strong, you can do this. And when we are grieving, we want to be validated. Hello, this is Ligia Huben. If this is the first time you're coming to this channel, to this podcast, welcome. I have dedicated my life to help the griever, the bereaved, because losses are part of life. And it's so important to have a space where we can share, our stories. And the story that I'm going to be sharing with you today happened just like 3 weeks ago. You may have noticed, if you follow the podcast, that I have been absent because, after this fall, I couldn't do it. However, what I wanted to do was, in the meantime, share with you an interview I had with an amazing lady about widowhood. You can see that interview there in the podcast. And also, I shared with you a meditation when you are grieving, because that also helps us to feel centered. So I hope that you also look for that so it can help you in your healing process. Now, when we are talking about something unexpectedly happens, something happens in your life, like in this case, I was, filled with plans, activities, things to do. I had planned going to Baltimore to an ADEC conference. I had all these things going, and suddenly this happened. I had a very strong fall that I needed reconstructive surgery of the wrist of my left hand. And I am lefty. And I say it because, when people notice that it's the left hand, they're like, oh, thank God that it's the left. Well, the thing is that I am lefty. And this has added an extra layer. It is so interesting because we have control with our hands. And I'll be expanding on that a little later. But what I want to say is that physical losses also involve emotional losses. Absolutely. Because what I have experienced is the loss of independence, the loss of my abilities, and the loss of control. 12 years ago, I had an accident that I needed reconstructive surgery in my leg. Yes, 12 years ago. And it was very strong. That was a very strong accident. However, I remember that was different. The experience was different because for some reason, and even though I couldn't walk and all that, however, your hands, and I was sharing this, actually with my sister, my husband, that not being able to use my hand, because this is my dominant. I have used, very little my right hand, mainly my left. So now I am forced, obviously, to use this one. And many things I cannot do, like opening the bottle for the medicine, for the pills, for the painkillers. I couldn't open it. And when I couldn't do that, I immediately thought about people that live alone. I thought about older adults. And being a gerontologist, and I have worked with the older population for many years, I know about these things. And now going through them gave me so much awareness, because it's really hard when you cannot do things, when you are not able to use your hands, to to grab things, to open things, to make things happen. It's incredible to comb your hair, to brush your teeth, to do things. So this has given me a lot of awareness, even more awareness because of what we go through. And I had a call from this woman. She fractured her foot. And she called me. She was so compassionate and so loving. And she said, Ligia, how are you doing with your hand? And it's, that's really, really painful what happened to you. And you know what? She said, I understand you because I went through, breaking my foot. I know what that means. And it's interesting because when she said that, it's like when we talk about grief in a sense of when we are grieving the loss of our loved one. Because unless we go through that, when people go through through a loss of a loved one, it's like they are more empathetic. They know what it is to go through that. When we go through some physical loss and we have gone through that, and there's, that happens to another person, we get to be more empathetic because we know what that is. Even the losses are different and all that, but we understand. So it is interesting because when someone says that, you feel validated. Because when we are grieving, we know that validation is essential. Validation is essential. People may say that, you can be strong, you are so resilient, it could have been worse. Absolutely. And I'm so grateful that it didn't, it was not worse than this, because it could have been worse. However, that doesn't mean that it has been painful and has been challenging, requiring patience, adaptation, and something else, because I tend to do analogies. And I was thinking, that's amazing, especially those days, at the beginning, after a surgery, especially with bone, that after, because they blocked the nerve. So all this, my entire arm was numb after the surgery. But when it started regaining, the sensation, the pain was really strong. And then the first 3 days, they were super strong, the pain, no? And I was thinking, and then you kind of start to manage that pain. So I would, apply this analogy with grief when we lose a loved one. That those first moments, those first times when you feel like, how am I going to just take the next step? How am I going to do this? That you feel that pain in your heart, in our hearts. And then, little by little, we learn how to live with that loss, to live with that pain, that emotional pain. The same with the physical. So I have taken this experience to reflect so much, because that's what we do. And I decided to do this because I wanted to show and to share with you my vulnerability. I even wrote a blog about it. If you don't know that I have a blog, you can go to ligiajuven.com, and there you can go in blogs and you can read what I wrote there, because it's basically this, talking about the different losses and how important it is to validate them. Now, validating them doesn't mean that you're going to stay stuck in them. It's not that then you're going to stay stuck, you're going to play victim, none of that. It's validating. I feel this way. Sharing is not the same as complaining. You see? So they're different. However, if we don't say anything, I'm like, yes, I'm strong, this is nothing, you keep it inside. And on top of that, I cannot journal because I love to journal. I journal every day. So, but again, I am lefty. Even though I have been using, my right to write some things, but, it's super hard to read, but I couldn't journal. I'm not able to journal. So I need to talk. I want to share. I want to share how I feel, and that helps me. So I don't repress it. I don't keep it inside. Because if we do that, then it gets somatized, and all those things. So that's why I have been so open about this. So open because if I tell you, validate your emotions, validate your grief, validate your losses, it has to start with me. So you know that I understand you, that you know that I also go through these things, and I also feel the grief, and I also feel the pain. However, there's something extremely important. What do we do next? We validate, we process. What do we do next? And there is where our thoughts come into play. You know that I did another video, I think it was the last one before I got, this accident, about the power of our thoughts. They are super valuable. They play such an amazing role. I'll tell you this. A week after my surgery, I remember that I woke up and I was so excited. So I went to my husband and said, I have already 1 week, of having had the surgery. 1 week already. That's amazing. I only have 5 more weeks. Because the thing is that the timeline of 6 weeks, what is it? Before the surgery, the doctor told me that I will be able to drive, based, his experience, after 6 weeks. And the bone healing and all that's between 6 to 8 weeks. So after 6 weeks, it was like this very important time frame, right? So I said, only 5 more weeks. I was so excited. So I went, to change and prepare myself. And then I was thinking, because I like to think, to reflect and all that. I'm like, wow, the power of our thoughts. I could have thought and said, only 1 week. I have 5 more weeks to go. The same thing, different perspectives. The same thing, different perspectives. And there is where we go. And that's what I always say to my clients. I have a frame here at the office, that a frame that someone very dear to me gave me, that it has 2 faces, 2 perspectives, 2 angles rather. This way you see it, shiny, and this way you see it, like opaque, no? And it's the same frame. It has 2 different angles, different looks, no? The same with life. An event, different perspectives. So that's what I want to say to you, that yes, things happen to us. Yes, we go through losses, we go through grief, we go through pain, we go through accidents, changes in health, we go through different things. However, how important it is our perspective. Our perspective, our patience, yes, patience. Believe me, I say it from my heart, patience, adaptation, because yes, it is a process. It is a process, adaptation, and something that has helped me tremendously. And it also helped me when I had my leg surgery. I remember that. Gratitude. Gratitude. I cannot emphasize that more. Gratitude. To be grateful for the things that you can still do, because I do. I feel so grateful for that. I feel so grateful for the doctor, for the staff. I did at Doctor's Hospital. I was so grateful with all of them, grateful, with my husband, people that have helped me, that have been there, all the expressions of care and love. I'm so grateful for all those things. Gratitude helps us tremendously. So I wanted to share all these things with you, opening my heart. I love that because it makes us humans, right? If you have liked this episode, if you are taking something with you, I would greatly appreciate if you gave me a like, subscribe, and if you share it with someone that maybe is going through a physical loss and feels that, they're repressing how they feel, you may help that person. So I would greatly appreciate that. And I want you to stay with this message. Things happen to us. Yes, strong things, losses. We go through grief. Yes. And those events we don't have control over. However, what we have always control over is how we respond to them. We can always make a choice. And that we make it happen. It's just one moment. We make that decision, we make that choice, and that is going to help us to move from suffering what we are going through to even transform it into something that helps us grow even more as a person. I send you all my love from my heart to yours.